This is Betstars and Stripes.
Certainly is Betstars and Stripes. Thanks, of course, to the wonderful crew at Betstar. Take Betstar on at betstar.com.au, and until half an hour before they jump, Betstar gives you the best of the best on all races. Also, Betstar are the home of US sport in Australia. To celebrate, they have $2 power lines on all NFL games, including the playoffs from 4 p.m. every Sunday. Head to betstar.com.au or betstar.mobi to take advantage of this great deal. We will welcome our panel for this morning, and it's an old familiar flavour about Betstars and Stripes tonight. For those familiar with Sunday nights going back a couple of years, we will welcome back Ed Wyatt for the first time, or for me this year, back on air with Ed. Ed, nice to have you here again.
Happy New Year. Would have loved to have been here last week, but had some other commitments, calling that baseball game, which ended up going to 11 innings. So I was in probably no shape to come in and talk last week anyway, but it's great to be back.
And one of the great reasons why it would have been good to have you last week is to have you on air again with Steve Salisbury. We've got him here once more. Steve, nice to have you back for a second.
Oh, it's so
Enjoyed
good to be
so
back.
Much.
Yes, yeah, we're good. So. Ed and I used to do this. We did this from 04 to 09.
We did a little later. We kind of followed Fonny. Remember, we come in and the studio would be not literally, but metaphorically on fire. Usually after we came in, especially if Collingwood. We noticed when Collingwood played the Twilight game, there was a much more of a wacky sense of phone calls and energy, and there was a lot of
the text machine had a lot more F-bombs.
Yeah, it did. Yes,
C-bomb.
correct.
They're probably still coming through whilst you're on, and they just start to filter away.
Correct. Absolutely.
With a little bit of vitriol. But for all of the listeners out there, I'm sure it's great to have the team back together again. 0433 98 11 16 is the SMS number. You can call us as well on 9429 11 16. A lot to get through. We'll jump into it with today's matches. The double overtime result where Baltimore got the job done over Denver. Just before we touch on that, here's the conclusion of that game.
Well, here comes the rookie. Kicked a 56-yarder this year.
Justin Tucker was 30 for 33 during the regular season.
And just think about that. 30 for 33. Well, the huge underdog is one kick away.
This would send Baltimore to the AFC Championship game.
Does Foxy call a timeout here? I hate to say ice him, as cold as it is.
Kick is on its way, and it looks good. The Baltimore Ravens have come into Denver and reached the AFC Championship game for the second straight year, for the third time in 5 years under John Harbaugh.
At that point in a home in Ivanhoe, there were expletives uttered, screamed. Yeah, that's Ed's favorite team. And Ed's team is Denver. And they were the favorite going into that game. They'd won 11 in a row.
Yep.
Playing as well as any team in the NFL. I picked Denver to win that game based on that form. I picked Baltimore at the beginning of the season, but it's crazy now how teams that you think you try to go on form. You look at these games, you go, all right, well, who do I think is going to win? Well, this team's really stunk the last month.
Yeah.
They were terrible, but they came in there today, and that defense was great.
Yep.
The one thing, how much do you think, Ed, that the pending retirement of Ray Lewis has invigorated that team? Because outside of that game against the Giants, which was like around Christmas Eve, they were awful the last month of the season. And to go into Denver and take that win is pretty impressive.
Well, first of all, let me say, weren't a lot of expletives. I was pretty much at peace with that because I thought Baltimore deserved to win. I thought Denver played horribly, made a lot of mistakes. And that's why I would downplay that Ray Lewis thing a little bit. I mean, they made some big stops and all that, but that game was Denver's to win, Steve. And there were so many coaching blunders in that, the fact that the Ravens got the ball back with 33 seconds, were able to throw a pass over the top, which does not happen in high school football. As you know, my dad's a high high school football coach, and that is the number one thing. When you are a defensive back, it's kind of like, when you go up to take a mark, if you watch footy,
Yes.
when you go up to take a mark, you hit its highest point.
Right.
That's what you do as a defensive back. The two rules are you don't let a guy past you, and then you go get the ball at its highest point. That safety did both things wrong. He let a guy get behind him. The only way you're going to get beat with 33 seconds left is to let a guy get behind you.
Yeah, that's
cardinal sin in the National Football League. Cardinal sin in any football, Darren. Seriously.
Yeah.
You were taught that, and I remember this. Being out with my dad at Banks.
Any level
at
of defense.
Banks,
doesn't matter what
Oregon.
sport. Yeah.
A tiny little town, working with the kids for the Banks Braves high school football team and trying to teach them you don't let a guy get behind you, and you get it at its highest apogee, if you want to use a scientific term. And they
It's
didn't
sort of
do that.
the goal side mentality, so you don't let any attacking player goal side of you wherever you happen to be.
You just
So-
can't do it. And that when I saw that happen, seriously, at that point, and we were talking, we were texting, you were driving back from the coast, and we were chatting, and you said, what's your gut feeling? And I said to you, gut feeling is Ravens.
Yeah, you did say that, and I tell you what, as well as that Ravens D played today. I mean, they got the stops when they needed to get the stops, and what you see, like the team that wins a Super Bowl. I mean, right there were going into this weekend. Arguably, every single team could make an argument, or their fans could make an argument that they were a legitimate shot of winning. I mean, even the Texans, who've been lousy.
of course.
Seattle could certainly do it.
Yep.
Atlanta probably thinks they can. The Niners can. Your team, Baltimore, everybody thought that they could do it. But what's going to happen is a team that has the fewest mistakes, and that was a brutal mistake by Peyton to throw that
terrible pass. Bad decision.
And I'm watching. That's funny when you watch a quarterback. Oftentimes what you'll see, you might just watch what they do, in the sense that they go up they grab the ball. You might not listen to what they say, but if you watch Peyton Manning, there's so much stuff going on with Peyton Manning that he's sitting there and he walks up to the line and he's looking at all the different players and he's shouting all these signals. He's going, Mike 72 is Mike. So what he's doing is he's pointing out that there's a hot guy on the defense. Not a hot guy in the sense that he finds him attractive, but he's
key to the defensive play.
There might be something in
right.
that.
That's right. So just to clarify, but I think that Peyton Manning, there's so much stuff going on. You're really, when you watch him play, you're really watching a professor of the game. He's as good as anybody. And I watched a few passes today, and because I didn't watch a lot of his career, I really didn't. You didn't see a lot of Colts games. And we were here for most of his career. And I'm watching him today, and I'm thinking, my God, that guy's passing is so crisp.
Oh.
He's 30, what is he, 36, 37?
Made a couple of beautiful passes. 2 touchdown passes he threw were magnificent.
That old fart can throw the football.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff going on. So when he walks up to the line, and I've said this 1,000 times, that's the toughest position to play in all of professional sports. All of professional sports. Because there's so much going on. There's the mental side as well as the physical side. So he comes up to the line, he's looking around, he's deciding what he's going to do, he's communicating to his own players, and then he's turning around and he's looking, and meanwhile the clock is ticking down, and he looks back at gets the snap with a second to go. So everything is working for this guy, and to watch him make that pass was really disappointing.
Very out of character, and a lot of out of character things for Denver today. I thought John Fox, who's made his living as a defensive coach, a lot of defensive blunders. The team jumped offside on a number of occasions.
They did.
There's two things that a lot of people were talking about on Twitter today. The one was after Baltimore scored that tying touchdown, the Broncos had the 30 seconds, 2 timeouts in the ball, and they just chose not to run a play.
Right.
I didn't have a problem with that, I'll be honest with you. I thought a lot of things can go wrong. You've just had a traumatic experience getting the game tied. There's a tendency to overthrow, to get it back. I actually didn't have a problem with that one. The one I had an issue with was prior to that, when it was 3rd and 7.
Yep, and they go for the run.
And they went with a run. They didn't let Peyton throw the ball, and then ended up punting it away. Now, that said, the Ravens had no timeouts.
No, exactly. And the other thing about it is that you mightn't take off as much time off the clock if you throw the ball. But
correct.
The odds are, 3rd and 7, there's no way in hell you're making that. The odds of you making on a run, you're
certainly
typically not.
No.
Much better shot at doing it with a pass. So that was it.
That I thought
was
was
a curious move.
I
don't know what the hell is going on there.
Yeah.
So do you blast?
No.
John Fox?
No. I think, look, it's be interesting because John Elway, blew up the whole Tebow thing, got Tebow out, and brought in Manning, and incurred the wrath of the fans more than a year ago. Now it's funny to see people go, well, who was the last Denver quarterback to win a playoff game? Tim Tebow. Now, I'm not suggesting Tebow's better than Manning, but I will say, and in all seriousness,
Okay, wait,
in the NFL,
you can't smile when you say
no. In the NFL and in the NBA, and they always talk about the ring is the only thing that matters, right?
The ring is the thing.
If you get to the Super Bowl, Buffalo got to 4 Super Bowls, didn't win,
right?
That's a failure in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah.
So, was this year's Denver team any better than last year's Denver team with Tebow in retrospect? That's my question. Yes, they were a better team. They won a winning streak. You know, they got the bye, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But ultimately, they didn't do any better than the Tebow-led Broncos of last year. Now, again, I'm not saying Manning's a better quarterback. I'm not saying they shouldn't have done the deal. Ultimately, it's another frustrating year. So what is John Elway going to do? That's the point I'm making. He may very well say John Fox is not the right guy. I don't know.
I don't think he will. I think he'll stick with it.
I don't either,
Both
Steve.
you, I mean, I give Fox a hell of a lot more credit for last season than I do this, because last season they looked like they were terrible. Kyle Orton was a quarterback.
It was desperation.
He put Tebow in there, threw everybody a curveball, and turned it into a pretty decent season. This year, the expectations were much higher because you looked at that defense, you looked at that running game, and you go, well, now we got one of the best ever behind center.
And one last thing, I will say the defense did not get nearly the rush on Joe Flacco that they need to get. There's a highly touted Dumerville and Miller and those guys. Flacco had a lot of time to throw back there, and he was good. Flacco, we saw good Joe. We've seen bad Joe. We've seen good Joe. This was good Joe today.
You're right.
Yeah, he was. So, to be honest with you, Steve, I'm disappointed, but I'm not angry. I'm not upset. The Ravens played a great game. Denver pissed it away in so many ways. Yeah. So I'm happy to move on and go from here.
All right, well, why don't we move on to the 49ers game?
Hang on. Let's not have your moment yet.
An SMS here. Imagine if Peyton had thrown a pick in that situation. Sometimes you have to just back your defense. Broncos D has been super all year.
No, I understand that. Yep, fair enough.
No, there's no one
that's
way
a good point.
No one way to skin a cat, as they say. Yeah. But typically you assume that Peyton Manning, you kind of play the percentage.
Yeah,
so that's what most NFL coaches do.
Yep.
You would not think that he would do that. Niner game today, it was, okay, you looked at this game coming in, and a few people text me going, the Packers are going to roll. And no, they're not. The only way that the Packers, here's the deal, the Niners kicked their ass today, primarily because they're a more talented team.
Yep.
Right? They're a much more talented team. Most of the time, the team with better players is going to win. When that does not happen, typically there's a fumble or there's some type of aberration, like what happened up in Seattle a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. But the Niners today, they put the wood to Seattle, or sorry, to Green Bay. Yep. I assume that they would. I mean, unfortunately for Green Bay and their fans, they have probably the best quarterback in the NFL. However, they don't have a whole lot of balance.
They don't have much balance.
And what I mean by balance is that when you're defending a team, if they do one thing extremely well and another thing very poorly, you're going to hedge your bets that they're going to do the thing they do well. So what you do is you defend for that thing. In the case of the Packers, the 49ers' first game of the year, thought these guys can't run a lick, so what we're going to do is we're going to have 6 defensive backs. They flustered Aaron Rodgers. They did a lot of the same stuff today. Niners played really, really well. And I said to you, and I talked to my old man today too. I said, "What's the key today? Colin Kaepernick not making any screw ups."
That's right.
Before the game switched, before the Niner game came on, he throws a really bad pick that gets turned back.
How about that? Young quarterback throws that pick in a playoff game, comes back and has the game of his life. Sets a record for rushing yards for a quarterback in playoff game.
And here's the deal, and you said to me a few times, like, I like my quarterback to sit back in the pocket and throw darts. And I like that because when you're out running, now nobody hit him today, but somebody will. It could happen next week. When you're out running the way he was running. And then it could have been a scheme. They may come out with a completely different game plan next weekend. Depends on who they play, depends on where they play. But if you're running as often as he ran today, you're susceptible to getting blown up. And that's how quarterbacks get hurt. So I like a quarterback that sits back and picks teams apart, like Joe Montana did, like Steve Young did. But I have to admit, if you're Seattle, who I think is going to win tomorrow, Seattle or Atlanta, who has a chance, and you're looking at this team now, you've got some real things that you have to concern yourself with.
Well, and the thing about Kaepernick, too,